Hello, TFO world, and welcome to this week's edition of Musician of the Week with Dr. Neal Postma. How are you, Neal?
I am doing very well, Dr. Larkin Sanders.
I'm so glad to know it. Are you experiencing a nice, warm introduction to springtime?
I am. It's a beautiful day here in South Carolina. It's spring here is pollen season, and the other day I was driving to the grocery store and we actually it was limited visibility due to how much pollen is in the air.
Oh, God. Well, I hope you're stocked up on allergy medicine and ready for action.
Always.
Good. So, Neil, you've been involved with TFO for a while now. So, can you tell us a little bit how long you've been involved with TFO?
This is going to be my sixth season in 2021. I had to think about it because it's been a long time, yeah, that I've been involved working as an orchestra manager for TFO.
That's awesome. Yeah, that is a long time. But you also play every once in a while, right?
Every once in a while, we've done one piece with the orchestra that I played with when we did Mussorgsky's pictures at an exhibition, and then I did one chamber work a few years ago as well.
Yes. And so, for those of you who are listening, Neil is a saxophonist. And so, there aren't a ton of orchestral opportunities for saxophone, but we're always happy to have them when we have the opportunity.
Our
Uh,
conductor Joe promised me to do Rachmaninoff, and then COVID hit, so he's gonna have to make good on that promise here in a few
you know,
years.
if you're listening, Joe Peters, we'll have to do Rachmaninoff sometime in the near future when we can have a big group again. I think that's
Yes.
a big challenge, naturally. So in the 6 years that you've been involved in TFO, mostly as an orchestra manager, but also as someone who plays with everyone, what is your favorite thing about TFO?
I love the close knit community that has been built in the 10 years of TFO's existence. It's a group of musicians that comes together once a year, and um, it's about 80% of the orchestra is returning year after year, and everyone knows each other, and we welcome our new members with open arms, of course. But yeah, it's just that returning community that's been built that comes around every year that's really, really special.
Yeah, another tally for the people, man. This is like remarkable that every interview, everyone has basically come to the like community people aspect of TFO. 100% everyone's favorite thing about TFO so far.
It's a wonderful part about being as a musician in general is the amazing community that we're a part of.
Yeah, it's a great group of musicians and the audience, the whole game.
Yes.
um, and so we touched on it briefly, but can you tell us a little bit about where you're living and working during the year?
Currently, I'm based in South Carolina. I've been here since 2015. I live in Columbia, which is right in the middle of the state. Yeah, being from California, it's weird to think that I travel to all parts of the state regularly to work. In when you live in Southern California, you never see Northern California because it's like a 14-hour drive.
Right.
But living in Columbia, I can be anywhere in the state within 2 hours.
Nice. You're super central.
Very.
That's great. And you are kind of hustling like so many freelance musicians in the world. Can you tell us a little bit about all of your jobs?
Yeah, I answer this question, fairly often when I do clinics and whatnot. And the biggest challenge is actually remembering all of the different hats that I wear, throughout the year. My primary, money making jobs are I'm an adjunct professor of saxophone and jazz studies at Winthrop University in Rock Hill, and an adjunct professor of saxophone and clarinet at Claflin University in Orangeburg, South Carolina. I run a private saxophone studio of about 10 to 15 middle and high school students. I'm an assistant band director at Catawba Ridge High School in Fort Mill, and I do sectionals with Nation Ford High School, also in Fort Mill. I do TFO in the summers. I work with D'Addario Woodwinds as a clinician for them, and that actually just came back after a long hiatus due to COVID, and Larkin and I work together with the American Single Read Summit. We're just now laying our groundwork for our 2022 event, and I sure I'm leaving something off, but that's the bulk of what I do through the year.
That's a substantial list, Neal. You're a busy
It's a
guy.
lot. It's a lot, and I don't know how people function without Google Calendar. That's all I
Oh my
can say.
God. I know, right? I feel like that's half of teaching like college lessons right now. It's like, okay, and this is how you use a calendar.
And then you have to look at the calendar after it's in there.
Yeah.
That's the step that gets forgotten.
Yeah. Well, we can't all be perfect. Yes. Oh, man. So you're still a really busy guy, but can you tell me a little bit about what happened to you and your work and the momentum of things when everything started shutting down due to COVID last year?
Yeah, me and I think a lot of musicians. 2020 was actually going really well. January and February, my studio was building. I was teaching a ton. I was working a ton. Uh, I guess I forgot to mention that I perform as a musician occasionally too. I play my saxophone quartet. We had our opening season, our first season in early 2020. I play with the orchestras, so all of that was going really well. And then we had to slam on the brakes when COVID hit, and it was, we're all kind of trying to analyze, how long is this going to be? Is this going to be like a few weeks and then we can start to open up again? I was never so optimistic, but looking around, like, how long is this going to be shut down? And my private studio basically fell apart because a lot of students weren't all that interested in taking lessons on Zoom, or they were just trying to make it themselves, and the music lessons were something just extra for them. My D'Addario work was just gone, and all in all, I was fairly lucky in that I only lost about a third of my income in 2020.
Good.
Compared to a lot of musicians where it was 75 to 100%. So consider myself very lucky, but it's been an exhausting year. I think a lot of us have felt that we've been working twice as hard for half the money is what it's been like during COVID.
Yeah, absolutely. It's been a rough year for everybody, but I think yeah, performing artists and musicians were hit at like some of the hardest.
Yeah, for sure.
Um, but COVID-19 wasn't the only thing that wrecked 2020. Um,
And 2021.
in 2021, there's been a lot of civil unrest and like crummy societal and cultural things happening in this country. Has your life or the life of your like students and colleagues been affected at all by any of the like civil unrest and insanity happening in the US?
For me personally, I've been trying to stay involved and do what I can to help promote, positive change in this country.
Mhm.
But I can't say that I have personally been, you know, I don't worry about being pulled over and worry
Right.
for my life. I mean, that's a privilege that I have. Um, but I teach at an HBCU, and a lot of my students really felt their communities being rocked in 2020. And when we look at what these events were in 2020, I think it's important to note that these are not new things that were happening. These are things that have been happening for years and decades and going way back. It's just that we really put a magnifying glass on them last year. Things have changed in that everyone has a cell phone with a camera now, so we're actually seeing these events rather than we just hear about them. Wow, oh well, that's easier to brush under the rug. But now it's much harder for certain people to ignore that these things are happening. Um, and then you add this powder keg of COVID. Everyone's under a lot of stress, and most people are stuck at home at that time. And yeah, things just really they finally boiled over. It's not anything new, but it's people are finally having enough of it and taking to the streets and saying enough is enough. we live in Colombia, and there were local protests here, and we weighed, getting involved and actually taking part in them, and we decided not to after hours of discussion, basically because we were in the middle of a pandemic and we were teaching face to face some of our students, and we didn't feel that it was. We thought it would be irresponsible to possibly contract COVID because of that and then spread it around.
Mhm.
But it's also impossible to separate that issue out from all the other issues that are going on. If you can't separate out just police brutality against marginalized communities. That's one facet of, well, we have housing and redlining issues, we have economic issues, we have the pay gap between men and women, we have the minimum wage problem that we're still debating, that people should be able to make more than what, 7.25 an hour. That's something that we still debate.
Right. I listened to something on NPR yesterday that talked about how companies like can get around minimum wage too. Like there are a lot of big companies in the country that don't even pay minimum wage because they found some wackadoo loophole.
Yeah, it's even enshrined in our Constitution that we have this amendment that's going to end slavery, but you don't get an accept clause in when you try to abolish slavery. But we do. We have an accept clause that
Yeah.
we can still use, our mass incarceration system to enslave people.
Yeah. It's
Yeah, these are the things that that need to be fixed, and it's just we're just scratching the surface right now.
right. Exactly. Like now everything is exposed. And we can't
Yeah, and
help ourselves.
that's one thing. People are really we've shown a light on these issues, and hopefully, it's informing people, and people are voting, and becoming more aware of the issues and how their votes can help change things.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, we have something like 250 new voter suppression laws that are being weighed in state houses across the country.
yeah. Sorry, I laugh when things are devastatingly uncomfortable.
Yes, I do too. I do too.
So, knowing all this, and I appreciate you being so candid and like willing to talk about stuff. Do you think music and the arts will have any kind of impact on the healing process and the way we communicate these things with each other moving forward?
Yeah, in a lot of ways, in so many ways. Well, one, music can be used. Well, music and the arts can be used to tell stories, and we can tell these stories of what's happened, and we can keep reiterating what's happened, and we can make sure that it's not forgotten. That's part of the role of the arts, is to tell these stories. But also, something that the arts have done, a lot in COVID times, is it's provided an escape for people. I mean, I don't think Netflix has made more money than they have in the last year. I mean, it's
Right?
just incredible, and it's providing an escape for people. And if we look going forward, I know all musicians are just foaming at the mouth for some sort of arts renaissance, and people wanting to go to live music, and live performing arts events. Like we talked about with TFO, that builds community, that brings people together. So that's how I think the arts can bring us back together, is building those communities back and bringing people together to enjoy something again.
Right. It's like in a world where we can be so divided,
Yeah.
something beautiful like music and the arts can we can put those differences aside.
Right. And like music can be very politically driven. I commissioned a piece that was yeah, inspired by the 2016 election and the hate crimes that were, all bubbling around that time.
Mhm.
But then, we can listen to a Beethoven symphony, and we can all agree that that's just great music.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you for that. That's good stuff, Neal.
I don't have anyone else to talk to. Becky is tired of hearing these things from me, so it's good to talk to other people about it.
I love it. And so I think we all know the answer to this question, me and the listeners included. But do you miss performing and teaching in person?
There are very few things I miss more than teaching and performing in person. Um, like I said, like we were talking earlier, I got to teach my first college student outside this year because the weather's warm enough, and I got to hear him in person without Zoom doing this to your phone and trying to teach through it.
Yeah.
And it's totally different. And we could talk about time, we could talk about intonation that you just can't quite get into when you're teaching over Zoom and playing together. I actually, this past weekend was my first gig, my first performance in over a year. I got called to play with Hilton Head Symphony, and we did the Kurt Weill's Three Penny Opera. And I got to sit in the same room with other musicians and play my saxophone again. And it was really strange. This is the longest I've ever gone without playing with a group. Since I started playing music in 1999, and it was like you get that little, almost those butterflies in your stomach again. Like, I gotta, am I in tune? Yeah, yeah, I'm in tune. Am I in time? Oh yeah, oh yeah. Like it's just not that natural um, performance mindset that we get so accustomed to. My
Yeah.
quartet, we're putting together a recording for a live stream event, and we get to play together again in May. And we keep sending each other messages like once a week, like, oh yeah, we're getting close. I practiced my part today. Yeah,
That's
this is gonna
awesome.
be fun because
You'll
we're
have
just
to you'll have to tell me when that is so we can share it on the TFO page so people can.
absolutely. It's gonna be really close to TFO when we actually do the event, so it'll be
Perfect.
fun.
I love it. That's awesome. I'm glad you missed doing stuff in person, but also that we are like so close to being able to like get back to some level of normalcy as far as like the performing arts and music is concerned. So knowing this, what would it mean to you to experience an in-person TFO this summer?
It's everything. It's everything to get to uh, bring these people back, to build that community back, and to have them play together again. This year on the program, there are no saxophone parts, Larkin. I'm very
Sorry.
disappointed. So
We'll
I
find
don't. I'm not
chamber
going to be
music.
playing. What's that?
We'll find some good chamber music.
Yeah, I'm looking at some pieces, so maybe we could do some chamber music. But yeah, as the orchestra manager, you see everything really come together, and you watch these people come together, through a different lens than if you're playing in the group, and to be able to be a part of that, rebuilding this community that was not broken. We've been having, we had TFO virtually last year, and we had our Zoom hangs and everything. We got the group together, but it's just not the same. And to get everyone, at least close to each other, while we'll still maintain distance and be safe about it, but to just be in the same room, or on the same lawn at least, is
Right.
going to be really is going to be really important for the Branson community and for the TFO community.
Yeah, I agree. Everything you just said. Well, thank you so much for talking to me today and for letting us shine a little spotlight on you as an integral part of the Taney Como Festival Orchestra family and community, etc. Um, and for all of you listening and watching out there, be sure to tune in next time for the next interview. Follow our Facebook and Instagram pages for updates, and check back at the website, taneycomofestivalorchestra.org, for all of the up-to-date information regarding the upcoming 2021 season and everything TFO. Thanks again for watching, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks. Bye.